Well, good Friday morning, Mobile, and all across the Gulf Coast. We thank you again for tuning into the Echo Stop Live podcast, and we're super excited. Curtis, welcome back. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I had a great Thanksgiving, man. That turkey was fabulous. It was a late pardon for the turkey, so he didn't quite benefit from the pardon. But
Well,
hey.
I mean, we appreciate y'all tuning back for sure. None of you know that we've moved this countertop out about 3 or 4 inches, but it has nothing to do with what we ate yesterday, does it?
Not at all. Not at all.
But Thanksgiving, it's a great time of year for many and for others. It's a great holiday that brings a lot of reflection on what's going on in their individual lives and in the community.
Absolutely. Thanksgiving is that time of thanks, but we often don't recognize that Thanksgiving is year round, right? It should be.
It should be. Well, what this really means is it's kind of the first notable holiday in the season of giving, and so today, really, what I wanted to share with our viewers, and I know Curtis, you and I talked about this. What we want to share with our viewers is what is service, and what does it mean to be in service and of service, and what is a duty to serve, and why this is so important for Operation Echo Stop, for our Echo Stop Live podcast is, it's easy to sit and to talk. It's easy to raise the issues.
Right.
But how do we tackle those issues without providing some form of service? And really, where I thought we'd go for just a little bit, if you'll entertain me on this. You don't always entertain, but if you'll entertain me on this one,
I'll try.
We will. It would be interesting to just have a little bit of a dialogue, a discussion, where we can talk about what service really is and what it's calling to be served and calling to be in service. And before we do that, though, speaking of calling, so we have the ability for you to text, call, or even scan a tip to our We Tip hotline. That number is actually on the bottom of the screen. But also during this podcast, if you want to send us a email, it's echostoplive@gmail.com. That's echostoplive@gmail.com. We make it a point to go to at least one email, if not more, every time we have a podcast, and we'd love to hear from you. And even if it doesn't make it onto this show, we will answer every email we get. We've had several come in even during the week, and we appreciate that, and we will try to get the appropriate person to give you the best response to what you're asking. It truly takes all of us, and this is just another way that we can bring your ideas and your questions in. And last thought, share this with you. I know this may come as a surprise for you, but I have a little surprise for you.
What is that surprise?
We don't have a guest today.
Ah.
That means you might get a lot of the hard questions today, Curtis.
Man, throw those hard questions at me, man. I will swing at them and try not to miss. How about that? Would that work?
No? But you're not talking about your baseball skills.
Excellent baseball.
Okay.
Player, man.
All right. Well, we'll go with that. But we're going to actually have just a little heartfelt conversation today, and really get into the matter of fact of what's going on. And I got some other surprises I want to throw at you during the conversation. But when we're talking about Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving, we're entering into the season of giving, this holiday season, which for many is exciting, and for others, it should be exciting. But there's things going on, and so how can we turn the fear that someone may have, or the anger, or the just the longing for stability into a form of service? What can we do?
I think we start off by having what they call an outward mindset. The Arbinger Institute wrote a wonderful book that some of the command staff of Mobile PD actually read. It's called Seeing Beyond Yourself. And the outward mindset is focused on how do I and others benefit from my actions. Not how I benefit, but how do I and others? It's that outward cone mindset where you may be in the center because we don't want you to forget that you're important, but we want you to also keep in mind that others are important too. And I think that segues well into a conversation about community and how law enforcement is tasked with seeing the community and how the community should be tasked with being part of the community that's tasked with helping law enforcement.
Well, and I think, just going back as a kid, I've heard a million times there's no I in team, and truly there's no I in serve. But I think there is an I in what can I do to serve another. And I feel like that's, to have the outward mindset that you're referring to, I think what we're really talking about is what can I do in my mind and translate that into something that benefits the community. Well, when the community that's affected by violence or violent incidents, especially this time of year, could that not be a call to action? Can we not use that? So when I say in service and of service, and what I really hear when I say those words, what I hear out loud really is, more than just talking. What can I do? A lot of people talk. A lot of people just say things. Our hope is that this podcast would be a conversation that would translate into something that the community can actually do. And we're out there with them. And it's not just us talking, but we're actually taking these ideas to the streets. And so if we're talking about a service, we want to join forces. But what can we do this time of year? Some basic things that might actually help people feel that they're of service, and just that sort of gratitude that comes with it, which is a motivation, a motivating factor to be more involved in your community.
You know what? I think really a lot of times when we ask people what can they do, you catch them off guard, because when you ask them that question and they've not already thought about it, they don't have an answer, not a quick response. And sometimes because they don't have a response, they become defensive. We don't want people to feel defensive when we ask that question. We want people to think about it, and they don't have to give us a response right away, but think about what you can do long term. Think about what you can do in the immediate if you actually have an idea of how you can actually be of service to others in your community. Because we all know that you can be of service at any point in time, whether it's cutting your neighbor's lawn or whether it is just looking out for your neighbor when they're out of town. Just that simple. But thinking long term is a very beneficial thing. We've actually reached out to quite a few churches, actually, and we're hoping that some of the churches in the community will adopt open air parks. And mind you, this is now, no one's going out to the parks right now, I would think, even though we're in Mobile and the weather kind of changes back and forth. But for the most part, we're asking churches to actually adopt a park in your area. And let's do some things this summer or this spring, actually, with the churches that will actually help bring community together, bring people together so they can talk about stuff, and to bring resources to the community that gives people some vision of self-actualization that helps them actually take more stock in their community.
So I have a quick question, and I'll quiz you, Curtis. My quick quiz question: have you ever been in a vehicle, driven down the street, seen something that you probably could have gotten involved in? Maybe you could have even stopped and helped, but it was just easier to just keep driving.
You know what? I think a lot of people see that from time to time. It can be someone who has a flat tire, okay, and you're on your way to church. That's an example, right?
Yeah. No, it's a good example.
Yeah, that's a good example. And you're thinking about, well, I don't have time to stop, but I'm taking time out to serve God. But God will want you to stop.
So
that's service to him, right?
Yeah. So I asked this question because myself included, I had to challenge myself a couple years ago, actually, and I really kind of brought it full circle even this year with a group through our church where the challenge was to get more involved. And the reason I asked that question is not to call out, hey, could you have helped in a certain situation, but it's really that comfort of sometimes it's easier and more comfortable to knock it outside.
Right.
And so the challenge is to get more involved. The challenge is actually to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And here's the really cool thing about it. When you stop that very first time after you challenge yourself to do it, and you assist somebody, or you see something in your community, and instead of driving through it, you actually stop and roll down the window and say, hey, something's not right, or maybe, have you called the police, or can I help? And in that situation, the very first time you do it, oh my gosh, how much easier it is each time after that. And that's really the comfort in being uncomfortable, because I think being of service is something that we're all naturally tuned to do. But what I think is there's this comfort level that a lot of people have, and they feel uncomfortable involving themselves in what they might perceive as a situation that doesn't involve them. And actually, if it takes all of us, then the community needs all of us, then every situation does involve all of us to some extent.
But the barrier, I think, Kevin, is getting over the fear. I think that fear drives inaction oftentimes with people, especially when the 24-hour news cycle is that of every horrible thing imaginable is being brought to your home by way of television, and you're watching it unfold. And it does not specify or clarify that this is happening in 12 states over and not in Mobile.
Right.
So, but people don't process it that way. They see what they deem as a danger, and it makes them very hesitant to respond to things that oftentimes are uncomfortable.
Well, and you brought up responding to danger, so this is actually a perfect segue. I have a little infomercial that we're going to show here in just a second. But before we do, I want to remind all of our viewers, if you know people who can help serve, if you know people in your community that you want to help get involved, one of the easiest first steps that they can do is actually subscribe to this podcast. And if you subscribe to the Echo Stop Live podcast channel on YouTube or follow us on Facebook Live, you can begin that process of service, because we're going to constantly, every episode, push out different ways to get involved or things that are going on in the community. But before we do that, I think now is a great time to share with you, when we talk about service, what it means to serve in a lot of different capacities. And we always think about law enforcement as the police officer, but here's something a little bit further behind the scenes that's just as critical.
Being on this side, people don't think you do much. I've heard several times, you just sit at a computer, you just sit at a console. It's way more than that. It means saving lives. You might not be on the scene, but you can hear everything that goes on.
It is a lifeline between police officers and citizens to make sure that everyone is safe and that everyone goes home safely at night.
It's been times where you don't even have time to breathe.
They're going in blind, they don't know everything that's going on.
Being the voice for the police department.
It means everything.
We are the first responders. You get us first. We deal with a lot of the public, so they call us on sometimes what you would describe as the worst day of their life, needing guidance and assistance, and we want to do the best we can to help them. If you have a heart to serve the community, this is definitely a great career for you.
To apply today, visit personnelboard.org/employment.
So it's the thought that counts. We hear that so often when it comes, especially this time of year. I don't know what that's code for, if you didn't like the gift or if you did, but it's the thought that counts. But when it comes to service, isn't it the heart that counts?
It is the heart that counts. It is that thing that, what would you want someone to do for you if you were in crisis, or if you just needed just some assistance in some way or another? It goes back to the outward mindset again. It goes back to thinking about others as we think of ourselves, because inherently we think about ourselves. Okay, it's inherent. It's just something that we do as people, as human beings. But it is not difficult to think about yourself and others, because when you think about yourself and others, it allows you to do things and be seen doing those things, and it encourages others to do the same thing, and that makes the load of doing what you're trying to do that much easier.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised, because we've done a number of community events, and we've had this podcast for a while now. And one of the questions that I seem to see circulate over and over again is, what can I do? A citizen asking, what can I do? And the first time I heard it, I was like, great. They're wondering how to get involved, but then when there's an idea, it's like, how do you actually translate that into action? Because again, if it's just talk, you feel good for a while, but the heart behind it really has to be the action. And I started thinking, and I'm like, we've been bringing all these services to the community. to show people what type of services are available. But sometimes the services are not in the community, but they're still needed. And so, maybe the act of service is something as simple as taking a neighbor or a friend to that service.
Right.
Or encouraging them to go. Or here's one: if it's a certain situation, whether it be a medical or a mental health professional or just a regular service, and they're just shy to go on their own or afraid to go on their own, you ride with them. You wait in the parking lot. Whatever you do, but you add that level of encouragement. And I'm just thinking, just right off the top of my head, so I'm eventually going to run out of ideas. But you laughed a little too quick on that.
I
one.
did, because it was funny.
Well, good. I had to make up for the previous episode where you said I wasn't really as funny as that. But,
You're not.
Well,
but-
there we are
okay.
again. See, now I got to come
All
up with
right.
another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, when it comes to law enforcement, there's been a lot of discussion about what does it mean to serve and that sort of thing. But when the conversation comes about, isn't there a calling for officers to even begin this career, to really, the ones that really stay with it for long term and invest their lives, their working lives into this career? Well, I mean, you were there, you are there. So, what does it mean to you?
It means everything. Being in law enforcement in and of itself is a huge dedication to service in a way that oftentimes takes away from your personal life because you are technically on the job 24/7 for the most part, because you are always going to be that citizen who is going to respond in some way, whether on duty or off duty, to a crisis. You don't just stand by. But when we think about community, it's really the task of everyone in the community not to stand by. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you have an example right off the top of your head, but it seems like, everybody's got those kind of memorable moments where you just, aside from the gift of the heart to be able to serve, what a blessing it is to yourself that you feel like you've done something and actually made a difference, not just in your career, but just in helping someone else. And so there's this form of satisfaction that's out there where maybe people are struggling day to day to feel their worth. We had a week or so ago, we had a podcast on hope and restoring hope. And, I think hope is directly tied to your individual feeling of self-worth. It's hard to have hope when you feel like you're not of value. And we learned in that podcast that there's value in everyone and that there is restored hope in everything.
I'll say this, Kevin, as a believer, I know that my life is bigger than me. And I think that anyone in law enforcement who should be in law enforcement realizes that it's bigger than them. But it's not just those in law enforcement that should think that way. It should be for everyone to realize that it's bigger than you. It's bigger than just you and your family. It's about you and your neighbor's family. It's about your neighbor's family, and that person who lives down the street from the neighbor. It's about that family. It's about understanding that we all have a part to play. We're all on this big field, this huge field of play, and some people are sitting on the field and keeping others from actually doing what they need to do on the field because there are no stands. There are no stands. Okay, we create the stands of inaction. But they're on the field, okay? And then when they're on the field, they're in the way,
right?
Especially if they're not moving in a progressive manner that helps not just them, but others.
So seek not recognition for what you do, but find satisfaction in what you've done is something that we've used as a sort of a credo or motto here for a while, meaning, sometimes what you do is behind the scenes. You don't do it for the attention. You don't do it for the newsreel or for the highlight. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And on that note, I've got a little surprise for you. If you're willing, can you hand it? Is that a drum roll?
That's a drum roll.
So if you haven't noticed, we've got these cool little coins sitting here, and these are Echo Stop Live podcast challenge coins and Operation Echo Stop challenge coins. And the reason they're challenge coins is because challenge coins are really for those that accept the challenge. And I would like to offer, if you're good with this, I would like to offer this challenge coin. If you can do something in your community, if you can go out there and do something, and you send us an email at echostoplive@gmail.com and let us know what you're doing in the community, a service. I'd love to find a way to get a coin out to you or have you pick one up somewhere along the way as just a reminder that you can serve, and even little ways. But again, this is serving someone else. This is serving someone in the community. Find that person that is in the most need. Find a way to serve them. We're not asking anybody to put themselves in harm's way or anything like that. All we're saying is find a way just in your everyday life that you can be of service, in service, for someone else, and really push that out. And we'd love to get a challenge coin in your hands. It just as a reminder that you are part of Operation Echo Stop. It truly takes all of us. And on that note, we actually have a question today. So
let's hear it.
We have several, and I'm going to read the first one that has been popped up on the screen here for me to read, and it's from Michael in Trinity Gardens, and he is asking, what is the meaning of to serve and to protect from a police officer's point of view? And I know where the question is coming from because he sees it on every police car. So first off, Michael, thank you, and happy Thanksgiving a day after. And Merry Christmas to you. But what does it to serve and to protect? What does that really mean? Where did that come from? And if you pull an SRP moment right here, because this is like the optimal moment. Where is it? I mean, you have to refer to that when you see this. But I mean, serving and protecting, was that not a core foundation of law enforcement in general?
Absolutely.
What does it mean?
I'll sum it up and just say basically that law enforcement gains its legitimacy from the community. The community legitimize. Had a tongue twister there, didn't I? Law enforcement. So with that means that ultimately that the community helps us shape what law enforcement needs to look like. And law enforcement serves the community in the capacity in which it needs to be served, with the understanding that law enforcement is very much part of the community as the community is part of the community.
So in your SRP world, which is Sir Robert Peel, what would he say if he was looking at our local community today? How is law enforcement doing? Are they protecting and serving? And how does the community assist, since the community is the police?
In my honest assessment right now, we're talking about just we're generalizing what we think Sir Robert Peel would say in the 21st century about policing today. He would say that, have you not read my 9 principles?
And this is exactly what I thought you would say, which is why I raised the question. So we've gone far and away, but the core premise of protecting and serving hasn't changed.
No.
The core premise of being of the community, for the community, in the community hasn't changed.
Right.
So we have maybe changed the way it looks, but we really haven't changed the way we act. We're getting close to the end of the show, but we're not there yet. So I think it's maybe a good time right now to remind everybody another way you can serve is to send us an anonymous tip. If you know something, they say see something, say something. We've always added see something, say something, do something. But we do have a tip line. It's 844-251-0644, 844-251-0644. That's our tip hotline. You can text that number. You can call that number. If you see one of the signs around town, you can even scan the QR code. We've received hundreds of tips since we've started this tip line. And thank you first, Michael, for writing in a question. And everyone else that's sent in a question, we'll definitely try and answer those in the next day or so that you get some feedback from us. So please keep sending in your questions. But if you see something in the community, one of the first things you can do, you can serve anonymously. And that is to serve the safety of your community by sending in a tip. If you have an interest in law enforcement and serving law enforcement, there's all kinds of foundations and associations, as well as the actual career path itself. There's different ways to find yourself involved in the community. And if you know somebody in need this time of year, Curtis, I would urge you to go out and to serve them. And Curtis, maybe you got some last parting words here.
I would just say that in this season of giving, realize that the season of giving is 365. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We are to serve one another. That's our mandate. And it's not just law enforcement's mandate.
So I feel like when you're blessed, you should also be a blessing to someone else.
Absolutely.
And I feel like if you're not sure where you stand in that whole world, really examine what opportunities there are to serve. And you'll find that the opportunity to serve is a blessing in and of itself. Well, on that note, I really appreciate you guys tuning in once again to our Echo Stop Live podcast. Send us emails at echostoplive@gmail.com. and we'll certainly reply back. But this brings us to the end of our show, but not to the end of our effort. We will be back every Friday at 8:30 in the morning, bringing you our podcast live with guests coming up, so you'll hear from others than just the two of us. But certainly we wanted to have this dialogue today, talk about service, being in service, of service, and for service for our community. Again, thank you to all the viewers here in Mobile and along the Gulf Coast. And until we see you again, be safe and enjoy your great weekend.